So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to make the light apply to the tattoo. So I'm trying to get the bits that are highlights already. So remember that a tattoo, a piece of like a piece of clothing, all of that inherit the shadow of the dense object that they're on. So when we have a dense object like this, let's say it's a square and we throw a piece of fabric on top, the piece of fabric will take the shape of the dense object, maybe a little bit of a curve on either side, but for the fabric. But if it's a tattoo on a cube, the tattoo will move all around the cube. Wherever there's a highlight, that tattoo will also be highlighted. So that's what I'm trying to say here, is that when we have anything that sits on top of an object that's already highlighted, it will inherit its highlights even if it's dark. Another thing is that not only does it inherit its highlights, it inherits its contours. So lowering that density, lowering the size. And I just want to pinch these down to follow how maybe the chest area, her breast area. But altogether, I think you should have chosen a different background. Everything feels very monochromatic, which isn't good. It's good to have some extra color complementing everything. Oops. So maybe a green in the background or a blue, something to complement all of that warm that was, because she's dressed up in makeup, right, Emmanuel? If she's wearing makeup, that means that she is going to be orange. Her color is going to be orange. You've made it as if the room is orange and this is her natural skin tone. In the movie, she's very orange. She's painted orange. She's a painted concubine, basically, was the storyline. Such a good movie. So what I'm doing here is I'm just applying more shades, more highlights onto these tattoos, making them feel like they're a part of her. Okay, the next thing would be to change the color of the background. I'm just gonna choose the first color that comes to mind. You can go ahead and choose a different one. But I think choosing a different colored background will make everything less monochromatic and really make her stand out. Okay, this was a terrible color choice. Let me think of another one. Ooh, I guess this is good. Doesn't hurt to throw it all into darkness too, but yeah. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of that monochromatic feel, so she actually feels painted. Alright, now that's about the color choice. About saturation, saturation is way too high on the girl. I think it should go down. She will still feel orange, she will still be in that color mode, but before it was really, really vibrant. And what you need to do is preserve that vibrancy for wherever you're going to use it that will count. So I'm going to get the saturation tool and I'm going to have saturation rings. Saturation rings happen in between areas of highlight and areas of shadow. So this would be a saturation ring, a good spot to throw some saturation right here along the ball of the cheek. And between this shadow and this highlight right here across the nose, these are all the areas that I'm going to throw in some saturation that really bring out that external pigmentation that happens with makeup. Select areas of high saturation, usually centered around areas of high contrast, responding to the amount of light feeding that saturation to begin with. Throw some saturation around the eye for the makeup. Beautiful job capturing her likeness, though. I knew it was an accident moon right away. Whatever happened to this actress? Another saturation line runs right across here. A little bit on her lips. In between shadows and highlights. Alright, so now they're really making a difference. Next I'm going to grab that I'm going to grab that highlight you used here and I'm going to connect it to the forehead. The forehead seems pretty just void of any highlight. It seems extremely flat. So I'm just going to throw some in there. Okay, so the point is that it's nice to paint with colors, but you have to know colors don't just come in their raw crayon form. colors come in their different saturations. Inside the object holding the color, they have different variations in there. So this part would be a little less. There would be a shadow just around here. So I don't have the reference, I'm just pulling out of my visual library. See how monochromatic it felt before, and now she seems to pop out just a little. Even if we bring it down to gray, it will still work the same way. We're always trying to make it so that the object is the center point, the attention is drawn to them. Areas that are jewelry, I will use a dodge tool. Be careful with dodge tool. Dodge tool is extremely tricky. Dodge tool is not your friend. If it was up to dodge tool, it would ruin your painting and burn it. Alright, what we have to do is carefully and really with a trained eye kind of take a look at what dodge tool is doing to the color underneath. It's overly saturating it. And I'm going to excuse that saturation because she seems to be holding that palette very well. But if you are going to use dodge tool to shade, if you're going to use dodge tool to render on top of a layer that has already color in it, you're going to experience a lot of that dodge effect, which is that random ass saturation that comes out of nowhere. Dodge tool is extremely tricky. Please be careful with dodge tool. Remember that if you are going to use it to create a shade, to rush a process, run the sponge tool on desaturate on top of that, just so you can get rid of that stuff. This is what I'm going to do next. I'm going to get the sponge tool and run it on desaturate on top of all the shadows. What happens with dark skin tones, olive skin tones, tan skin tones, Middle Eastern skin tones, this area does not face enough light, so it's not going to get as much saturation. What happens in their shadow is very different from what happens in skin tone that is Caucasian. Non-Caucasian skin will have, except dark skin, so except African skin. African skin and Caucasian skin both have purples in their shadows. Skin that is olive is just too rich in the orange that counteracts that purple, and too rich in the yellow that counteracts that purple will be barely visible in the shadows. What happens is that it gets diffused by the yellow that's already sitting there, so it turns into a gray. It's more of a gray that you're using in the shadows of a tan skin tone. It's more of a gray than a purple. The skin will look a lot more realistic if we think like this. This part here, I don't want it to be thrown off in shadow. The light's coming from the side. I'm going to connect and start adding that larger glow. What happens with skin, it doesn't just receive light, it sends light back. This causes a glow, a bloom that happens naturally, a natural bloom that happens across the face in all of the areas that the light touches. So what I'm doing with my soft brush, I'm kind of creating like a stippled effect and just running over all of the areas that are illuminated. It's part of her eye. The cheek, very delicately running down the cheek and connecting that over here. I want her skin to feel like there's a humidity around her. There's a glow that her skin is revealing, the glow in the room that her skin is revealing. And I'm just going to toss this over all the areas that are facing up. So if we take a look at the before and after now, a lot less monochromatic. And the skin feels a lot more alive. Really overly saturated, really orange, really orange. Over here we're starting to match the contours of the body. I know get your fucking sentences straight. The collarbone is not straight. It's not a perfect line. So maybe that's why it doesn't feel like it's adhering to the lines already there. I'm going to introduce another color. So really monochromatic before. I'm going to get that rich pink, that fleshy undertone color that's in everyone no matter the race, and I'm going to throw that using a color mode on top. There must be some kind of blood reaching out through everything that we can see. And why are you not in color? Okay. And I'm just going to throw that underneath. I'm going to get a pure white or pure black, it doesn't matter, but to saturate the eye just a little bit more. The eye feels very bloodshot. If we do this, if we forget to lighten the white of the eye enough, it will feel bloodshot. It won't feel natural. Okay, so I'm just going to get that pink again because I kind of painted it away. So just a really fleshy pink, just around here, leaning towards the pinks just up here. Okay. So now it's a matter of texture. How do we reflect the fact that she's completely painted and is wearing lots and lots and lots of makeup? So makeup has a very different behavior with the light. It has more of a shimmer or a shine to it. So now I'm going to let Dodge Tool do its thing. I'm going to let Dodge Tool go crazy because I really want to show off how there is an external pigmentation in this part of the eye right over here. I am going to get the saturation tool, sponge, and I'm going to raise it up a little bit and then saturate around the eye. You'll get that saturation back, but you'll get it in the areas that demand it. Remember, less saturation on the side that is in the shadows. You need light to feed color. If there is no light, the color will not be fed enough. I'm going to make this shadow here a little sharper. After a while, you're going to have to escape the reference you're using, especially if it's a screenshot from a movie. Those things are edited a lot. Shadows are deliberately diffused so that there's more of the face coming through. So you're going to want to choose some natural instinctive shadows that you're noticing yourself or that you feel like should be there or you've just stylistically chosen. And I'm going to connect her eyebrow downward. Her eyebrows were really low. And this eye right here, I'm going to throw more of a shadow underneath it. Just like that. It's okay if the shadow is random and everywhere. I'm going to erase it where I need it. Put it on darken. No, that's not how you do it, Istebrak. Darken. There we go. Alright, I'm going to erase the shadow where I don't need it, just around here. Get rid of that. And then I'm going to blur it. So Emmanuel, you watching? The soft brush and just match it to the contours. Now even if your reference didn't look like this, you have to follow this. Another rule for tan skin tones under the light source. They also get whiter under the light source. Whoopsie. So tan skin tones become gray in the shadows and become whiter in the highlights. Okay, so I'm going to run some of that white only in the hottest, lightest area. Again, it's going to make the skin feel more realistic. Too much monochromatic will make skin look orange. That's why tanning, when someone's been tanning, you can tell they look orange because you think that tanning salon has a selective saturation lines. You think it knows where to saturate a little bit extra. No. Just like I was saying the other day, tanning salons are just a big hoax. You just throw a bunch of orange on a person without even thinking about what kind of skin tone sits under it, what kind of colors sit in shadows versus colors that sit in the highlights, how much saturation for areas of highlight versus areas that are in shadow. I think if a tanning salon started to be that picky, they'd get really popular. So I'm desaturating with the brush along the highlights. All that's left that really is orange, Emmanuel, are the midtones. That's all that's left. Anywhere where the light touches gets just a little bit whiter. That's how you get that realistic skin tone. Before it was too saturated. Way too saturated. And if you have to paint a painted woman like this, it was fully monochromatic paint, you have to make it feel a little more natural. Or else it's going to be like Blue Man Group. She's going to feel like a bunch of actual thick, opaque paint was painted on her. Are a big hoax. Yes, everyone repeat back to me. Okay, but the strands of her hair should stop the light from falling on part of her chest when it comes from the right side. Yes, there should be a sharper shadow. Darken. Just gonna darken that way. Good suggestion. Good suggestion. So now I'm just gonna bring in some reds. The reds, you don't really need them because she's painted that much, but I feel like we need them. If you don't want to use them, you don't have to. The light source is always going to be white. There's no yellow light source. If the light source was yellow, everything would be yellow. So I'm going to use a white light source. And that's actually, I'm just going to use dodge tool to rush the process. And that's what I'm going to do to highlight the hair. Hopefully I can get the old layer back and fix that extra highlight. And what I'm going to do now, yeah, that's too much highlight. I'm going to go back, and I'm going to erase that excess highlight that ended up on the doohickeys. These doohickeys. That was so random, a stupid pen, so random. What I'm doing now is I'm just going to desaturate again, because remember, hair also reflects, hair is reflective. Reflective, as long as reflective is said, as long as I say the word reflective, reflective means actually reflecting the light source's color. Repeat that back to me. What does reflective mean? When an object is reflective, how do you do, what do you do with your brush? Again, I'm desaturating this. So the hair doesn't feel, again, orange or monochromatic. You need to start using more colors, Emmanuel. So it actually feels like brown hair. And brown hair doesn't just, like, unless you've put henna on it or dyed it, it really doesn't turn orange under the light. I'm going to show you where it does get a little bit orange. And that's the saturation ring. So we put saturate on again. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. And on the edges between the highlight and the shadow is where we throw a saturation. Right along here. Okay? On these edges of the face, right along the edges, sorry, I'm totally losing my voice. I'm going to burn and darken the hair. Okay, because this is the half that is not facing the light source. So we need to darken that bit. Kind of just flattened out, didn't it? Alright, let me try that again. Smaller brush this time. I think this whole piece right here is a little too straight. Okay. Deselect. Whoops. Just painting away these edges. Getting rid of that orange glow around her. Maybe throw these highlights in a little bit higher. Now she looks really orange, right? Compared to the world around her, she looks as orange as she needs to be to feel like a painted woman. But before, it was an overly done amount of orange. It was too much. Before, after. She feels less realistic before. Too much saturation in the shadows. It was like an orange light was turned on. Even if this is how it looked in the what happened to my brain? Even if this is how it looked in the movie, you can't choose these colors and expect them to work if they're not doing photorealism. Something happens along the way when you turn it into a painting, which makes the colors less believable. Lots and lots of editing in that actual movie scene. Mommy. So not as saturated as we think. Lots of grays. See how many grays there were over here? Really painted. The contour lines of the paint on her chest did have that bend downward. These did shine, so you can use, so it's exactly the changes I made. Really white up here. Saturation lines over here. Her lips were a little bit overly outlined, actually. Sharper shadows, too. So much sharper shadows. Your shadows are a little bit soft. So a much sharper shadow would have been really beneficial for your rendition. But see how the hair itself is just so dark. We might even rethink the saturation line on her hair. This is a wig, and a wig doesn't do all of that. A wig doesn't do that much saturation, or doesn't behave like real hair does. So you can go ahead and desaturate that whole thing right here. But before, after, just a little bit too saturated. If you have to saturate anywhere, saturate on the midtones. Please, please write that back to me. Don't go toward the light, but it's orange. I don't know what you're saying. So let's see what everyone's saying. I'm trying to see if Emmanuel said anything. All right. So Emmanuel, you understand everything? She was painted orange. Yeah. She was like painted orange. And a painting, if you're learning from this, if this is a study, don't oversaturate like this. And again, on its way into being a painting, something happened. See, this is her actual skin tones. Really, lots of grays for a tan skin tone. But when something is painted, and the filters I think also exaggerated this a little bit. That it was more orange than it really did look. This is probably a better version of how her skin really did look. A lot less orange. This is another scene. This is the first scene she's seen in, and then a scene later on in the movie. She looks a lot less orange. This was deliberately edited to make her more glowy or godly. So remember, you don't need that much saturation to make it work. That's filtered. Monochromatic. I hate monochromatic in movies. I don't know why they do that. Okay. So I'm going to shut this down and send it back to you. And Photoshop is just going to take a holiday. If I have to saturate it, do it on the midtones. Yes, exactly. Okay, so this piece right here has a little bit of a confusion about where the light source is coming from. What happened? Which means that we're kind of forcing the light around to outline it so that we can get more form. Why? So, sorry, it's just Photoshop's made my brushes going crazy, but I just want to show you that you don't need, it's impossible, it's not just because you don't need it, but it's impossible to have a shade, a shade where the light can't reach. That's impossible. Impossible. Right? So anywhere where the light is coming from the side, that's the only place that gets that highlight. Everywhere else that looks away does not. So we leave that highlight coming out from the side only from the side to go to the sides of the cube that are facing the light source. What we need now is to raise the canvas up just a little bit. Why? Okay. I've been very impatient with Photoshop today. Extremely impatient. I can't handle it anymore. Okay. The next big mistake kind of that I see is this attempt to show where the light source is coming from. Don't worry. We can tell the light source is coming in from that side. That's all we need, the fact that you're indicating it on the object itself. But we don't need anything else here to show where that light source is coming from. Are you serious? I did this all in one paint stroke. Did it again. Okay. That'll teach me. Don't do everything in one paint stroke, because that Control Z will just undo everything that you did. So don't try to indicate on the character design sheet that this light source is coming in and throwing a light randomly in a room that doesn't exist. This room officially doesn't exist. It's just the character that exists in it. This is a character design sheet. It isn't an environment. A character design sheet is not an environment. Write that back to me. So now that we've decided, okay, the light source isn't going to come in from here, we have to make other choices. When the light wraps around, when a secondary light source wraps around a three-dimensional object, it doesn't just end at the edge. It's not just an outline. This object isn't, the light isn't behind her, it's beside her, a little bit behind her shoulder. It's not all the way back there where we have a rim light or a silhouette. So you need to change the way you highlighted this area around her head and make it a much lighter color as well. Because if it's a secondary light source and its main role is to diffuse the light source, the primary light source shining through, this means that we're going to have a higher a challenge, a real challenge for the primary light source. This is randomly saturated, probably to show off that it's transparent, but it's taking away from the fact that this is another glowy bit in her arm. So now that we've done that, now we can really make some glows happen. Okay, so I'm gonna color, no, color dodge. Why is this happening to my Photoshop today? Okay, so I'm going to throw a glow there, and I'm going to throw a glow there. This secondary glow here is going to attach itself to this part of her shirt. Over here, it's going to reflect on anything on the inside. And if there is any light at all on her face, it's from the spell. So this means that I'm not sure what I'm doing. Okay, I can't get to that part, so deselect. I'm going to try to show you exactly where the light source happens on the side of the face. So lasso tool, the bottom of her nose, probably the upper lip, the bottom of the lower lip, and the front of the chin. All these areas are facing towards the light source, the part of the cube that faces forward. So these are the areas that might get that purple glow to them. But that's all that would be reached on this side. That's all that would happen. This light source here is not going to bend around and illuminate an area it has no access to. Light rays don't bend. Light rays only go in straight lines. Okay. And then finally, I think her eye is glowy. So I'm just going to make her glow a little more to match the spell. Okay? So what's the lesson? This secondary light source coming in here and through here, you don't have to indicate it. Just show that where it's happening. Glows, lights have glows around them and an aura around them of light. Character design sheets really don't have to be treated as an environment. You can treat them as a flat background, just a really flat, disconnected background. The point is to showcase the character. It is not to introduce them into an environment. They don't need an environment. A little bit of light around here that ends just around this side from the spell. This bit here would be shadowed. This bit. This part right here. Well, anything that faces away from the secondary and anything that faces away from the primary is all shadowed. So you have a clash. You're going to have a Terminator line. Okay. And that's it. These are the changes I would make. More space at the top. And more kind of just cohesive light source map that happens around the character. Less of that busyness, so ignore the little bit I added. Less of that busyness where you're trying to show off where the light source is happening. I think that confused the focus. This makes for a much more organized presentation for a character design. Nice and out of the way. It's nice to have a color in the background too. It doesn't have to stay to gray. But gray is also another great option. because it really highlights where the character is coming from. But adding a saturation is going to take away from the saturation on the character. See how purple her dress is? If you send this over to like as a pitch to an art director, they're going to ask you to desaturate it, and then you're going to see how saturated, how purple her dress really was. But if we throw it back to 0, it didn't look that bad. It actually looked pretty gray, pretty desaturated, because the background wasn't a neutral color to show really what kind of choices we are making. If the background is gray, we're paying more attention to the colors we're choosing on the character. This is a really, really purple character. You're going to have to remember that. Did you really intend for them to be that purple? Or did the background not allow you to see it? Can you all hear me? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to flatten this and send it back to you. If you guys want your images back, just message me on Facebook. This piece right here, I don't really have time to paint over it, but I am going to just point to some of the areas I would love to see changed. I think you should do more studies on the nose, just really show how a nose works. The water line right along here is too high. She feels like she's crying or in tears. There's only at one point is the water so high, water content so high on the water line that the pupil behind it and the iris behind it get distorted, and that's if the person's crying. If it's just a normal dewiness in her face, she's not going to get that. I'm just going to try to paint over it. I have 15 minutes. Alright. Another issue is that we're not really sculpting around, so I want to just show you how you could sculpt around the eyes, around the bulges, the hills and valleys, the hooded eye. These are all areas that warrant a gradient. So it's about knowing when to blend and when not to blend. And these true measurable bulges in the color in the light environment have to be showed off. So right up here there would be another little illumination. And you add the highest amount of light with the smallest brush, because that's not everything has the same peak. Everything has a different level in the peak. Right? So we're treating it again like a landscape, and if you think about a portrait, a face like a landscape, you paint a lot less symbolically. I'm going to throw a cast shadow. I think your cast shadow is a little bit too diffuse. I think you're just avoiding all kinds of real heavy choices in form and rendering and edge work around the nose because you just don't have enough studies in that area. I like the smile. It's kind of like distinguished. It's not always just a pretty face. But I am going to darken the lower half of the face. Careful with these little stipply marks they read as a real texture. So careful with trying to hand paint in pores. It won't work if you're doing it too much and randomly in an area where it doesn't even have that much contrast or light for us to access that kind of detail. It'll just look like she has acne or there's a surface pigmentation change. So I'm going to go back to darken. I don't want to touch anything you've painted, but I want to add a core shadow across half the face. The next thing that would be required are the upper lip lights that happen in a face. These are really important. They're part of the set. You can't just have some and not have the rest. Right along here, just the area where that looks up at the light of the lips. Look at the face from the side and it'll explain it a little bit better. And then the one and only overused, overrated shadow on either side of the nose. I really don't know. I do know why you guys use this excessive shadow. I do. I'm not going to pretend I don't know. I know why. Because you guys get a better read when you outline something. And you think it's a better read. When I get rid of this shadow right here and just lighten it, look at what we're missing. We're missing a highlight on the nose. There's barely any highlight. This is because the shadows were doing all the work. We're not really painting a nose, we're outlining it. This is another reason why you should be doing nose studies. You're avoiding all of the major indicators that you would have learned in a off the stage, off masterpiece hours study period just dedicated to the nose and the function of the nose and how to better render it. You need a highlight in this area. You don't need a highlight in between the eyebrows. You don't need an excessive highlight on the chin. You don't need any pores painted on the chin. You just need to focus on the nose for now. So edge work it comes with studies. Who here has problems with their edges? Who here has like a fuzzy look to all their drawings? This is an issue, a big issue you have to focus on as soon as possible. So this edge work right here is needed for this nose. That's as much as I can do right now. The rest is all up to you. You have to take the time, put in the hours to really get yourself acquainted with the form signatures and the landscape and all of the important, all the stuff that's expected of you out of rendering a nose. All the core shadows and the dark spots and the radial shading, all of that stuff you're going to learn off screen, off the stage, in a nice safe sandbox environment called a gray canvas. Just learn, draw a couple of noses. Next time you draw a pretty face like this, you won't make all the mistakes. You won't make all the mistakes. You made many mistakes. You outlined the nose, you forgot about the core highlight running across it. There aren't any major compressions happening on the face that happen in 3/4 view. And the nose really shows off the 3/4 view. If the 3/4 view is visible on any feature, it's the nose. And we don't have that here. Okay, these are all indicators. This me as a teacher, I know when I see a student that needs to study a nose a little bit more. And the nose itself is an indication of other things you've been avoiding. Maybe diagrams. Take a look at a nose diagram instead of a study of a nose or another person's drawing of a nose or just the reference of a nose. Take a look at a diagram of the nose. It'll help you think about the choices you're making with your brush a lot better. Over here, what happens when a lip laughs is that it creates a bend, causes a shadow just along here and a nice little corner. And I'm going to darken it. Just needed it for the edge. The upper part of the lips get some light, and then at the very end maybe we can sneak in a stipple or two of highlight for the chin, but that's it. The chin doesn't get a whole bunch of detail if the nose, the be all and end all of a portrait second to the eyes, is ignored. We can't make these kinds of mistakes. Alright, so I gave some form to the nose. I didn't give a lot. Maybe I could give a little bit more by pushing this edge all the way. But you outlined the nose, you avoided the nostrils, you drew the nostrils symbolically, you didn't have a core highlight run across the top, you threw the shadows on either side of the nose. Lots and lots of mistakes. I have tutorials on the nose. Lots of people have tutorials online for noses, which I recommend you do. Oh yeah, and one more thing. Please don't, please, please, please don't use pure white on the whites of the eyes. They're not actually white. Right? Especially near the top where that shadow is cast off the upper eyelid down toward the rest of the eyeball. Beautiful eye, beautiful holdover symmetry. It's just you need to do a little bit more studies understanding how form really works across a face. And the darkest part of the lip is right here at the corner. You're almost there. Just stop avoiding the nose. Just here at the bottom. It's a really pretty face. Nice job not using a pencil thin brush for the hair. Good job. You might want to do a little bit of a sharper job for the Cupid's bow. Yeah, I said I wouldn't paint over, but I can't resist. Alright, so the befores and afters. Before, after. We've concentrated the lower half shadow of the face to stay in the lower half. That's where it belongs. This is a greater geometry. Thinking about the face as a landscape, a geometric landscape. The nose has less of those dependencies, so one tiny little dark spot isn't going to do it for you. There's no structure to either nostril. You're sharing word values across the face. This value is specific only to an eye socket. You can't use it on the side of a nose. The eyes look like they were crying. There wasn't any real shading around the fat of the eyes. So if you look at the navigator, that's where it really passes. Okay? I did use a soft brush. I encourage you to use something else. Soft brush tends to just make everything look really glowy and bloomy, and try to stick to whatever brush you were using and apply these changes. What are the differences between cast shadows and core shadows? Core shadows are the contour shadows inside the object. Cast shadows can happen on an object on the outside of it. They take the shape of the object. Cast shadow is that long shadow that is cast. I'm sure most of you know what this is, but sometimes there's an English, like a lost in translation when I teach. This is a cast shadow. This is a contour shadow. The dark, the gradient, the shading, the shading, the blending that happens in the object. And a cast shadow can be on top of an object, which is the ground, and takes the shape of the object casting it. This is a cast shadow. Alright? Don't forget these in your work. If a core shadow is when it directly hits, how can it be a shadow? If a core shadow is when it directly hits, how can it... What? A core shadow is the main shadow that happens on the main geometry. So the main geometry of that circle we looked at is the circle, so it's going to have one larger shadow running across it. Alright, let me just show you one more little lesson on what core shadows and contour shadows look like. Alright, right now we're looking at a bunch of really just safe portraiture. We're looking at a safe portrait here. It doesn't have many cast shadows. The only cast shadow we see is right here on the nose and on the chin. These are the ones that we memorize. This is the typical face we're always drawing. A cast shadow is when we start doing this. When we start casting the shadow of the upper part of the forehead on the rest of the eye, a larger nose shadow running across, a lip shadow running across. We see the shape of the head on the chest. The shadow really came across. This cast shadow, understanding of the cast shadow is really, really important for making more sophisticated choices with your shading. If you don't know how to do a cast shadow, you're going to be stuck with that no cast shadow look right here, which is really boring. If you're always going to draw this, it's really not that. It's not going to do anything for you. It's not going to do anything for your art. It's going to be really boring. But this combined with some ambience, oh man, this is just what it's all about. Right here, making these amazing choices with shadows. So if anyone's curious what this is, before you write a comment, what's that program? This is Portrait Studio, a studio my team and I worked on. It's really, really great to explore some core shadows in your work. Look at how they change according to how the face moves towards the light source. This is a fixed light source showing you which direction it's coming from. Okay? Thanks everyone. Have a great day. Bye-bye.